From the southeastern corner of western North Carolina, this is Folklore. I'm your host, James Hernishan. Before we get to the interview, allow me, if I may, to make the case that the 2026 Republican primary for our state representative might be the most interesting local race of the season. Now, I'm not going to go so far as to encourage all Democrats in Polk County to change their party affiliation to independent just so they can select the Republican ballot next March. After all, it looks like Chuck Edwards is one of the more vulnerable Republican members of Congress in North Carolina, and Democrats in the northwestern half of Polk County might want a say in who gets to run against him. But for voters in the rest of the county, in Columbus, Tryon, Green Creek, and Mill Spring, there's a good argument to be made that the relative lack of competition on the Democratic Party ballot means that who wins the GOP primary for State District 113 may be more consequential. First, let's look at recent election results in the district. In 2018, Republican Cody Henson beat Democrat Sam Edney by 16 points, 58% to 42. Henson was forced to resign a few months later after pleading guilty to cyberstalking his wife, and his party appointed 25-year-old County Commissioner Jake Johnson to fill the seat. Jake had been the youngest county commissioner in history and the top vote-getter in his very first election. The next year, Jake ran against the same Democrat candidate, beating him 60-40. No one bothered to run against Jake in 2022, and he beat Democrat Michelle Antelek in 2024 with 67% of the vote. So Johnson seems like a pretty solid bet for 2026. A few weeks ago, he announced his intention to seek another term. Which brings us to Mike Hager, who is challenging Johnson for the right to represent District 113. Unlike just about everyone else who is running to unseat an incumbent in these parts next year, Mike is not a political newcomer, not by a long shot. In fact, he served as state rep for District 112 for 6 years, finishing up as House Majority Leader until 2016 when he gave up his seat to look after his parents. Back then, his home in Rutherford County was in District 112. Now it's in 113, along with Polk, Henderson, and a little bit of McDowell counties. Mike's obligations aren't quite as onerous now, and he wants back in the game. Over the past 8 years, he's kept a hand in politics, working behind the scenes as what he calls a state government relations specialist. He's on the local Habitat for Humanity board in Rutherford County, and he's a member of the Greenhill Volunteer Fire Department. And he thinks his opponent, who is literally half his age, is vulnerable. Mike won his last election 9 years ago by a margin of 59-41, which is comparable to those Jake Johnson has racked up. Both he and Jake have been elected to the State House 3 times. Both have built solid networks of support. So I think it's safe to assume this particular race will be closer than it has been in a long time. We talked at the Saluda Library earlier this month. Mike Hager, welcome to Folklore.
Thank you. Great name, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm very proud of it. Let's begin by introducing yourself. I know you were a known quantity on the political scene, but you've been sort of doing something else for the last little while. So for those who aren't part of the Republican consulting circle where you work in now, give us your story.
Number one, thanks for interviewing me and letting me be here and talking with you. I grew up in Gaston County, a couple counties over from Rutherford County where I live now. We grew up fairly poor, fairly on the bottom end of the economics. But we always had what we needed, but we never had all the luxuries. There's a good example. My mom has an 8th grade education. My dad barely got out of high school, but he went into the Air Force. So he did fairly well after that, come back, bought a house, started raising kids. And so my parents knew nothing about college. My brother and I were the first 2 in our whole extended family. Now my mom has 10 brothers and sisters. Whole extended family go to college. Certainly the first 2 to graduate also. So put myself through school. I worked at night at UPS. And during the day, in the summers, I worked at a natural gas company painting gas meters. So we did that. That really drives you to want to hurry up and get out when you're paying for it yourself. And so it really drives some toughness, if you know what I mean. You got to be resilient. I knew that I could go to the cafeteria at UNC Charlotte, where I got my mechanical engineering degree, and I could get a tuna salad sandwich, a chicken salad sandwich, and a Coke for less than $2 then. And that's what I ate every day because that's what my budget was. So that does breed a little bit of toughness and resiliency, I think, that you don't see for a lot of people that don't have to go through that. So I got out of engineering school, went to work for Duke Energy. Worked for Duke Energy almost 20 years, but my last assignment was in Rutherford County at the power plant in Rutherford County. We moved there in 94, 95 timeframe. And part of this will filter into why I'm running also if I tell you my history, because it kind of all builds up. I didn't just one day wake up and say, hey, I think I'm going to run for office.
Nobody does.
Yeah. So I watched the NAFTA issue come through. And if you've been to Rutherford County, it's all textile mills and a couple big furniture plants. So when NAFTA hit, I think it was passed in 94, we started seeing the effects of it about 98. So I'd been in Rutherford County about 3 or 4 years at that point and just saw the devastation. I mean, the utter devastation of people that were just there to want to make a living, live the American dream, let their kids do better than they did by sending them to college. Then all of a sudden you had these, thousands of people out of work in Rutherford County. And it was devastating. I wasn't out of work because I was making energy. I was making power work with Duke Power. So we were doing good.
You can't offshore the production of energy.
No, it's hard. It's hard to ship it from overseas. So I watched businesses like it. There was a place, a barbecue place near us called Hickory Log Barbecue that had been in business for decades that went out of business. And all its folks got laid off. So I saw that and I said, well, I don't know who's going to do something about this because nobody seemed to care. Nobody in Raleigh, nobody in Washington seemed to care. They go, well, this is where we're going now. So, go learn something else. And they told these manual workers that worked with their hands. They were just good, honest citizens that didn't get in trouble, that wanted to own a house, own a car, and raise their kids. So I got involved in the party. And then eventually in Republican
Hold on. You got involved in the Republican Party.
I'm sorry, yes, Republican Party, yes.
Okay, let me just explain it a little bit because free trade was very much a Ronald Reagan initiative. And NAFTA was a continuation of the U.S.-Canada Free Trade Agreement. So why, if you were concerned about offshoring and the effects of free trade agreements, why did you choose that political path?
Great question. Number one, free trade looks great when you're sitting in Washington. Free trade looks like crap when you're sitting on the ground in Rutherford County. I can tell you, and people that have done that, all their life, that have turned a wrench or run a machine, are not going to all of a sudden at 50 years old go out and get trained for something else. Not going to do it. So I felt like that's the easiest way to change my party. I agreed with the values of less government. I agree with the values of what the Constitution lays out. I agree with the values of them staying out of our life and paying the least amount of taxes we can. But I didn't agree with this part. So I agree with 90% of the party, just not this part. And I figured if I didn't get in there and work, I didn't see anybody else was willing to do it. Nobody else was willing to care. We didn't have congressmen coming down and saying, hey, we're going to fix this. We're sorry about it. Let's get you some help. We didn't have anybody from Raleigh coming down saying the same thing. We had Republicans in Washington, but we had Democrats in Raleigh that represented us. Neither one of them seemed to care. So I got involved in the party and moved up and become chairman in 2006. And then right when we were getting our feet under us, the housing crisis hit. You remember that. You're down if you were down here when that happened. But that was even more devastating than the NAFTA. We had unemployment in 2009, I think it was, almost 20% in Rutherford County. 1 out of every 5 people that were working or not working. And if you went to the U6 number, which means they were underemployed, they weren't making as much, or they went to part-time, it was closer to 30%. Phenomenally devastating for us. I don't know if those two words work together, but you get the picture.
Well, I would say Rutherford County still hasn't completely recovered.
We have not. We did I'll say that because of that, the same thing happened. I looked around and go, nobody cares. I mean, it's shit. Excuse my French, but nobody cares. And that really pushed me into saying, okay, I'm going to run for office. Maybe I can do something. And so we ran in 2010 and started in 2011, won that seat in 2011. But my whole history of where I am is because I say I'm a fan of the Bible. I'm a Baptist. I believe in what Isaiah 8 says. The Lord was looking for somebody to go speak for him to the Israelites because they were doing bad things. And Isaiah said, here I am, send me. And I believe that. I think that if you're in the spot, you care, you've got to do something about it. And then, of course, 3 terms, I felt like we were on the right path. We started reducing, we started out with a 7.25 wage tax. And then now we're working it down. It's below 4 now, getting below 4. And I thought that was the right go to get the burden off my folks in Rutherford County to let them have more of their money, decide where they want to spend it. And industry has started to come back a little bit. And now I think, we're in the same situation again. I've got elderly folks in this district in Polk County, Henderson County, and Rutherford County that are hammered with inflation. Their property taxes are sky high, both on their houses and on their cars. Their medicine's not getting any cheaper, and they are on a truly fixed income. Once you start taking that Social Security, you're it. That's it. That's what you get. And of course, there may be Medicaid also, but think about this: their healthcare costs are going up, their food costs are going up, their energy costs are going up, their ability to live in the county on property taxes is going up. So where do they turn? They don't have any place to turn. Again, who cares about them? We've got young people that can't afford a house. We need young people in Polk County and in Rutherford County and in Henderson County. We need more young people to come back. We need young teachers to come back. How do they afford a house now? How do we fix that issue? There's ways to fix it, and it may take a government solution to do it, but we've got it. So who's willing to do that? So we got small businesses, for folks like Polk County and Rutherford County, small businesses make up about 80% of the employment. We've got to give them a mechanism to be able to expand, be able to know how to run a small business, number one, give them the ability to do that. So now I've gotten into what I'm thinking about, but that's kind of where I am, why I'm running.
Okay, so you were the House Majority Leader.
Yes, sir.
Until 2016.
2016, yes, sir.
Right, and you stepped away from politics.
I stepped away because my dad had a stroke, and my parents live in Denver, North Carolina, which was 2 hours from me. So he was wheelchair bound up until he passed away about 5 or 6 years ago. So I've been taking care of them ever since. So Dad passed away about 5 or 6 years ago. We got Mom in a good place where she's looked after now, so it gives me the ability to do this. But I put the priority on my family first. They had taken care of me for probably longer than they should have, even when they didn't have the necessities to do it. So I felt like it was my obligation, priority to take care of them.
So now there's less of demand on your personal life, and you're saying that you think we're back in that position we were back in like 2006, 2007, and then 2008 we had this big crisis. And you're saying you got to go back to work in Raleigh because things are repeating themselves?
I've been, I was in Raleigh 6 years in leadership, and I see how folks can get in Raleigh and get jaded and forget about their folks, their constituents. I not only went back to help my mom and dad by term limiting myself to 4 terms, but I only served 3 of those because I need to help them. I think it's easy for a legislator, whether you're a senator or a representative, to not see the hurt unless you're involved in it every day. It's good to come back to your district, and that's what I've been doing. I'm a member of, I'm on the Habitat for Humanity board. I'm a member of my local fire department. I work with the local food banks to get the food because I see it every day. And I think if folks would see that every day, they would become less jaded and less calloused and be able to figure out how to do the right things. We got some great stuff done when I was there. We were working on big stuff. I don't know if you remember, we had almost a $4 billion structural deficit in our budget. We had to fix that. We had a $2 billion debt to the federal government on unemployment taxes. We had to fix that. There was the 2 big things we had to fix. I think we fixed them with the leadership of Tillis. We fixed those in the first 2 to 3 years, got those done. So that took the debt off. That took a lot of that unemployment debt was not our debt as far as it's a government. It was the small businesses debt and the business debt. So we figured out how to get that paid for them and get that off their backs. So I thought then that we were headed in the right direction in 2016. I said, well, I think it's safe for me to do what my number one priority is and go work with my parents. But it seems to be with the inflation where it's come. Now, I know inflation has kind of dipped off a little bit, but it hasn't went down. Inflation's inflation. Once you add $1 to that price of that bread, it's going to be there. We hadn't had any de-inflation. So that's what I see now. And working with all those groups in Senior Center, in Helene, I was there from the Saturday after the hurricane. I worked there for the next 6 months in Helene, in Chimney Rock, Bat Cave, and Lake Lure.
And putting your engineering?
Yeah, well, my engineering school skills will a lot in the project management arena because I used to do big projects for Duke Energy. So the first thing we did that first week of the hurricane was put a project management team together in Chimney Rock. So we had Duke Energy, we had AT&T there, we had DOT there, we had their subcontractors, Wright Brothers there, we had the town there, we had FEMA there, we had the Corps of Engineer guy there. And we coordinated the next week's activity every week. We'd meet on Tuesday and we'd say, okay, what's going on this week? Who's got priority? A lot of times it was DOT, sometimes it was Duke, sometimes it was AT&T, and we'd figure out where to go. That's why they're so far along now. Once we got it established, I went up to Bat Cave and we did the same thing. And once they got established, I went to Lake Lure because they had a bigger issue of cleaning out the lake, which I will tell you that it looks like we're trying to get the lake back full pond by mid-May. So that'll be good if we do that.
It'll be good for Lake Lure.
Yeah,
for sure.
For Lake Lure, yeah. And it'll help the whole gorge because a lot of that tax tourism tax comes from Chimney Rock and Lake Lure for Rutherford County. So without that, we're missing a pretty big chunk of how we operate. So I've answered all three of your questions all at once. Sorry about that.
No, what I wanted to get to the heart of this conversation was, what do you think Polk County needs from its state representative that it is not getting out of Jake Johnson
Great
right
question.
now?
Great question. Appreciate it. Number one, to be here. That's been the issue in Rutherford County. I see it up here. I talk to people in Henderson and in Polk County both. I ran a poll the day after Labor Day, and I was going to say, do I need to get involved in this race or not? Because we knew he had no presence in Rutherford County. 80% of the people we polled, which are most likely voters in the primary, 80% of those people either didn't know who he was or had no opinion of him. And his favorability was in the low 20s. So there's a problem there. And if you look at my Twitter announcement, it says that we haven't had the attention we need because I believe we have a representative that is absent. And I've spoke with him about that twice, and he's not moved forward with my concerns.
I don't think you get too many people disagreeing with you that they haven't seen a lot of Jake, but 2 years ago, he won with 63% of the vote in Polk County and even higher in Rutherford County. I'm not sure about the numbers in Henderson. And in fact, he basically achieved similar results as the man at the top of the ticket did, So,
and I did the same results. If you look at my results, they were the same in the district when I represented Rutherford and Burke.
Okay, so that brings up the central question. If these days, thanks to the absence of a strong local media, a lot of races are really decided by who's at the top of the ticket. In other words, you got an R or a D behind your name, and how is the presidential candidate doing determines whether you win or lose.
Correct.
So
now, you were talking about the general election or the primary last time? The general election.
The general election, yeah. So if you're going to take on an incumbent who has an automatic advantage, even if there's people disappointed with his visibility or what he's done for the county, if they're Republican, which this is a Republican county.
Well, and I'm a Republican too, and I've ran these races before, so I've got a lot of experience running races. We know that people want their representative here. I'll give you a good example. Would you like to guess how many bills that your current representative passed last year?
I'm pretty sure there's not that many.
Zero is the name of it. Zero. And before that, and I'll explain this to you. When you author a bill in the General Assembly, there's 4 spots of sponsorship. The person authors the bills in the first spot, and then he goes and recruits people he thinks can help them just by having their name on the bill. Like you might want, if you got a tax bill, you might want to get the finance chair on that bill with you because she runs finance, and that bill will have an easier time through. So fortunately, when you search in the ncleg.gov, you can search on the bills that Jake has sponsored, plus the one he's been in the first spot on, which means he authored those bills. So he's been there, he got into 19, and this is 2025. So he's been there for 6 years, same time I was there. In that 6 years, in the bills that he's been in the first spot on, the ones he's wrote and sponsored, he's passed 2. And those have been local bills. Local bills are like a layup in the NBA. Nobody's going to mess with your local bill because that's your district. The governor doesn't sign them. So it's just a total inactivity, not just the presence, but the inactivity. If you listen to when he says what's happening in the General Assembly, he talks about what the caucus has done, not what he has done for the General Assembly. I'll give you a good example. The School of Math and Science. We had one in Durham. It's for all the kids that...
My son attended that school.
Cool. In the one in Durham?
The Durham.
Well, Representative Blackwell and I are responsible for the one that's sitting in Morganton right now. That was my bill. That was mine and Blackwell's bill, because we felt like your child had to go all the way to Durham. He had to leave your house, go all the way to Durham. We felt like the West North Carolina children were getting a bad deal because they had to go all the way to Durham. We wanted to develop one where folks can go from Forest City or Saluda or Hendersonville to Morganton, which is an hour and a half away, instead of the one 4 hours away. So that is sitting up there because of the bill that we ran. I had a constituent in Spindale that had terminal cancer, and she didn't have long to live. So we ran a bill, right to try bill, to allow her to try any drug that she wanted to try. And she lived another 2 or 3 years. I don't know if it was for that, but she did live longer because she was able to try different drugs that weren't in her regime. So those are the kind of bills we're talking about.
How many bills did you manage to shepherd through in your 6 years?
I'm glad you said. I don't know the exact number because you have to go back and look, but I'll tell you some of the things that I did. I ran all the hydraulic fracturing, the energy exploration bills. I did the overrides for the energy exploration bills. I ran all the bills that did away with the 2007 Senate Bill 2 or Senate Bill 3, which was a 35% tax credit for renewable energy. So I handled that. That took me 4 years to do that. I handled the film tax credit, taking away the film tax credit, which was a 25% tax credit for anybody that made movies in North Carolina. But it was different because it was called a refundable tax credit, which means like Iron Man 3 cost $100 million in North Carolina to make. We gave them $25 million. We gave them a $25 million check out of our treasury to take back and do whatever they wanted to do with. It didn't help my constituents in Rutherford County. It doesn't help folks in Polk County. It doesn't really help folks in Western North Carolina. Most of those are made in Wilmington. So why should my constituents in Rutherford County pay for movies made in Wilmington? Now, those are some of the things we did. Now, you can argue whether yes or no on that, but we felt.
I'm not here. I didn't bring you in to argue about specific policies. I'm just curious about your legislative record and how it stacks up.
The very first bill I ran and got passed, the very first one, I was it'd been a month in the General Assembly. Representative Cleveland, I ran a bill. Greensboro had immigrant IDs, illegal immigrant IDs that looked just like driver's license. And they were using them as driver's license, and the police were having a hard time distinguishing the two apart. So the first bill we ran was to disallow them from doing that. And that was a 2-hour debate, mostly with the Democrats on the floor. That was my first bill I ran. And so we were into it from the first. Senator Moffett tells a story because he came in the same time I came in. He said, the folks that went in 2010, we weren't expecting to be in the majority. We thought we'd be in the minority. So we were ready to fight. And we just took that same thing in there and fought anyway, whether we're in the majority or not. Heck, we fought amongst each other, which was fine. That's what we need to do. Also, as majority leader, I had a group of about 19, I made it 20 other legislators that we met with every Wednesday. We went over every bill that we were going to have on the floor, and we went over the budget. In 2015, I think it was, you'll see that we stayed in the legislature till November. And part of that was because my group, there was some pork in that budget. We cut out $500 million. And the speaker didn't want to do it. So we stayed there till November till he decided that we weren't going to change. So we were making things happen, I guess. And I was leading that effort to make this happen.
Okay, making things happen is an important point, because if I was a completely disinterested person and I stumbled across North Carolina politics, I would say the incumbents have got to go because you still don't have a budget. Again.
You have one job in the legislature of North Carolina. And I think the continuing resolution piece that passed was not the smartest thing to do, because that allows you to be lazy with making a budget. And we need folks in the General Assembly standing up and telling their leadership, we want a budget. We're not, we've got to have this done, because people are suffering. I'll give you a good example. Mental health. I represent a mental health company called Partners, which is what's called LMNCO, a limited management entity. They take Medicaid dollars and they distribute to the folks that do substance abuse, mental health issues, some of the more severe autism, all those things. They distribute those dollars to those folks that need them. And they have continued, since I left, to cut mental health dollars. This year, they're about $650 million short because we don't have a budget. And I'll tell you this, the Conference of North Carolina Sheriffs, the Sheriff's Association, has said that's their number one problem in every county in this state is mental health issues.
Yeah, I did an episode about mental health in Polk County a year or two ago.
And you can go to Rutherford County, you can go to Henderson County, you can go to McDowell County. It's all the same problem.
So here's an interesting question, I think. A lot of what you've just talked about, your accomplishments or what you want to focus on, things like mental health or helping folks deal with the healthcare system, renewable energy, helping people who need help. These kind of line up more with the Democratic platform, don't they?
I don't think so. I don't think helping people is a Republican or a Democrat issue. I really don't. And I think you got to be frugal when you do it. You got to take, again, less of people's money, get the government out of the way. And I'd say I want to help small business. Part of the way of helping small business is getting the government out of the way, get some of these restrictions off of them. I'll give you a good example. Go try to build a house or build a business nowadays. How many inspections do you have? And we duplicate that. Forest City, for instance, I believe this is still true, has their own inspection department. And so does the county. Why do we need both inspection departments, number one?
Well, there's an entire movement in the Democratic realm these days called abundance, and it's all about trying to streamline approval processes and reduce
That's
bureaucratic
reducing government.
burdens.
That is common between both parties.
Right.
Yeah, I think you can talk to most folks that I believe are conservative saying we need to get government out of the way. We need to reduce the footprint of government because the bigger the footprint, the bigger it costs, and the bigger burdens and roadblocks they put in place you have in the business. I don't. If I've got a small business. I have a LLC that S corp, and I can't tell you how many forms I have to fill out every year. How much money it costs me just to have a business in North Carolina. And we got to streamline that. We've got to get better to where young people can get into the business. I would love to have a small business incubator in all the counties to where a young person coming out of high school, maybe they don't want to go to college. Maybe they want to start a plumbing business. They can go here and say, listen, how do I get loans? How do I do QuickBooks, or how do I set up an LLC? Do I want an LLC? Do I want an S corp? Or do I want individual proprietorship? They need that information. They're not taught that in high school. But if they're not going to go to college, we need some place for them to go teach that, for them to be taught that.
I hear those kind of discussions in Polk County, but you mentioned earlier how local bills are often the only thing that some representative manage to do it. And Jake has sponsored or co-sponsored several local bills that affected Polk County directly. Not many of them are very popular. A lot of them are things like making our school board partisan. Gerrymandering, the latest gerrymandering of House congressional districts split Polk County in two. People didn't ask for that from Polk County. And when I put these questions to Jake, he just said, well, other people are asking for it. And so my question to you is and this is what we're going to do the last part of the interview, how do you intend to represent the folks of your district, Polk County in particular, because that's where we're here? Are you going to follow in Jake's footsteps at really embracing a legislative agenda that comes from the top of the Republican Party? Because that's what's been going on, right?
You can do both. Now, I'll give you an example. When I was the representative for Rutherford County, I refused to let it get split. And I even actually got it to be in the same congressional district because we were split before I got to be the representative there. So you can both say, listen, I may be okay in the overall big picture of redistricting, but my district's going to have to be like this. It's because my people want this, and this is what I'm doing. But you bring up a good point. You got to listen to the folks. I don't care, Republican, Democrat, Independent. I don't care. They both live here. They all have a vote. They all have pay taxes here. So you've got to listen to all of it. I used to go to the NAACP and see what they needed. I would ask the Democrats, and I still got great Democrat friends. You've got to go to all these places and listen to folks, but you've got to be here to do that.
But to be a little cynical for a second, Jake Johnson took a lot of grief from people complaining about these local bills that were not really, no one in Polk County asked for them. Polk County commissioners actually took stances officially on the record opposing some of these things. But Jake still won with 2/3 of the vote because he's got an R after it.
Yeah, it's got R's. Exactly right. That's just that's the basic truth you got to deal with. You got to start with that first. So right now, in this point in time, Republicans going to win unless they're really bad. So
I agreed. So what is your pitch to Polk County voters who have maybe been disappointed with their representatives' representation? Why switch to you? How can you assure them that you will be more responsive?
And that's a great question. One is because they'll see me. That's number one. That is a lot of the battle, being there and listening to folks. I'm in Polk County probably more than he is right now, and certainly in Rutherford County, Henderson County more than he is. I was at a Henderson County GOP men's breakfast Saturday, for instance, and understanding what your demographics are. I know that the elderly have problems. They have issues, with what they're facing right now. You got to push out real bills that affect those guys. Everybody's going to be cynical at first till they see what kind of legislation you're going to put out. You got to be there and you can say, here's what I want to do. But until you go do it, they're not going to have any faith until you go do it or have you trust in you. And I don't blame them because they've been burned before. And so you got to be here. You got to listen. Then you got to go put that in action. And they can look at my record I had the first 6 years, look at the legislation we ran. And they can tell that I said I'm going to do A, B, and C. We're going to do A, B, and C. And I'm here. Look at what I do. Again, on the board of Habitat. I'm on my local fire department. I've done 2 river cleanups in the last. We had one on 920. We just had one this past Friday. I'm there when they need me to do it. So I'm in the county, and you can talk to anybody in Rutherford County knows me. They'll tell you I love my county. I love this area, And if you do that, then you're here, you're working with Habitat, you're working with your volunteer fire departments, you're there when the river cleanups happen, you're there to help folks out when they're in need.
One of the things that impressed me the most when I first moved to the States, and this was a long time ago, the local congressman, his name was Jerry Studs, and he held town halls, we call them, every 3 months.
You've got to do that.
So you never went a long period of time without being able to grill your congressman about why they voted the way they did and tell them what you wanted to do. So can we expect that kind of thing?
Oh yeah, yes. This district has 4 counties. It's Rutherford being the largest of the most populous, and then of course Henderson being the next, and then Polk, and then a little bit of McDowell. I would want to do one at least once every 2 or 3 months in each county. And that's easy enough to organize. Everybody's not going to love what you do. Everybody's not going to like what you did, but it's just the fact they're out there talking and you're hearing what they did. Plus, I like to visit fire departments when they have their meetings, see what their issues are, senior centers, county meetings, any of those things. You got to be at all those things, plus do the town halls, because you get different perspectives from everybody.
Well, as someone who tries to say at the top of things, I would appreciate that.
Yeah.
ability.
Well, you got to have that input. Again, I say it up front, you've got to be here. You've got to be here, whether it's eating lunch at the local diner and seeing who's sitting at the counter there or sitting at the table and talking to those folks. I do it all the time in Rutherford County. I'm going back and having lunch with some folks in the county today in Forest City. Every Monday and Friday, I have a lunch with a different group of people. And we see who's sitting around us and we talk to them. And that's what you've got to do. You've got to be here. You can't be in Raleigh. You can't be in Charlotte. You can't be traveling. You got to be here. When I was a legislator, I very seldom went on boondoggles. You get all these trips that you can go see, and some of them will come out in the some of them, Jake, some will come out in the campaign. And so I stayed here because I wanted to listen to my folks. I went to the fall festivals. We had just had a fall festival in Rutherford County. Jake wasn't there. I went to I've been to the men's breakfast, like I said, this past Saturday. Wasn't there. I've been to meetings in Polk County. Wasn't there. And that's been the biggest complaint out of Rutherford County is they don't see him. And he's not done anything for our county. We've got, I'll give you a good example. We closed 2 schools in Rutherford County. I fought hard to keep them open, because of financing. We couldn't get the money to keep them open.
That was such a big deal that I even heard about it here.
Yeah.
And it's hard to find out what's going on in next door county.
We've got a community elementary school that closed because we didn't have the money to operate it. We needed $400,000 a year to operate that school. That's all we needed. No, it's all we needed. Again, I go back to what I said earlier. Guess what? Nobody cared. I was fighting the fight. I was trying to get the legislators involved. Nobody cared. I'm tired of nobody caring.
So just to wrap up then, it sounds like if you were not trying to unseat an incumbent, it wouldn't be that difficult for you to get elected. I think, okay. But it's never easy to kick out an incumbent unless he's someone like Madison Cawthorn who just embarrasses the party.
Yeah.
Right. So are you confident you still have the connections within the party to raise the kind of money you're going to need? Because you're going to have to make up for the fact that we don't have lots of media to give you free advertising.
Correct. Yeah, we do. We've already started fundraising. We've been fairly well off so far. I'll put a good bit of my own money in it. I can probably put as much as I need in there. But when you fundraise, you get input from everybody, and then they have a stake in your campaign. So it helps you to fundraise. So we're doing a fundraiser this Thursday, a little small fundraiser, to kind of kickoff fundraiser. I've got another one with the sheriff of Rutherford County on the 21st. We're working on right now. Then I'll have more after that. And of course, I've got from running as majority leader, I have contacts and fundraising capabilities across the state.
But I'm curious, how easy is it for you, even with your history and your connections with the party, to unseat an incumbent? Isn't that difficult to get, power players in Raleigh to get behind you?
Not really, because a lot of them I've served with already. They know what I'm capable of doing. They know what we've done before. I've got last week I've probably had four representatives call me and say, "Hey, what can I do?" They're there. I don't want to involve them. I'm not going to involve them. I don't want them to get kind of crossways with anybody. So I'll just go through my normal fundraising capabilities and network that I have. It's not going to be easy. It's not like running by yourself or running against somebody that's never run for office, but certainly not impossible. With the numbers we've seen in the poll we ran, It's fairly likely.
So have you been talking with like Phil Berger, Tim Moffitt?
Yeah. Jennifer Balcom, those folks. Yeah, they're actually pretty good friends of mine. They need to, I told them, go to all the fundraisers. Jake has one, go to Jake's. I'll invite you to mine. I don't want them to have to choose a side. It's not right for me to ask them to do that.
Well, no, whoever wins, those folks are going to have to work.
They'll work
with
with, exactly right. And I don't want to be crossways with Jake or with me. If I win, they get crossways with me because I went to Jake's, or if Jake wins, they get crossways with Jake because I went to mine. Just go to both of them, or go to either one.
All right. Well, look, if you win, I'm going to hold you to your promise to show up.
Yeah, I'll talk with you many times you want to talk with me. You'll get tired of seeing me. I'll call you up, say it's the time to talk. And what we used to do a lot of times is, you ask me how to keep in touch with folks. Radio stations are a great way to do that here. There's WCAB in Rutherford County. I would meet with those guys once a month, and we would go over the agenda, what we got done, what we're working on doing. We'd take calls, we'd do all that. And I'd like to kind of expand that out to both counties also. Do it in Polk, do it in Henderson. Radio is a great place, especially in the morning, to get a hold of folks. So I'm not shy. I'm straightforward. I tell you what I think. I'm not going to tell you something because I think it sounds good or they get you to vote for me. I think it's the right thing to do. Be open, honest, and be available.
All right. Well, good luck.
Yep.
And thanks so much for finding the time.
You did a great job. Thank you, man. I enjoyed that.
One thing you might have noticed in that interview is that my guest did not bring up the elephant in the room, one Donald J. Trump. Maybe that's because we were talking in the immediate aftermath of the 2025 election, in which voters in several states shifted by 10 to 20 points from Republican to Democrat, a massive swing that has been widely attributed to the president's low approval ratings. Still, a Facebook post announcing Mike's campaign, made just a couple of days after the election, features a photo of the candidate alongside none other than Donald Trump. And one more thing. Jake Johnson has sat for Polk twice over the past 3 years, and I'm hoping he'll do so again before the primary. As always, you can forward your feedback and suggestions for future episodes to jamesh@polklore.com. Thanks for listening.